In a densely populated area of West Delhi, where the noise of the streets drowns out even the loudest screams, 19-year-old Sonia from Nangaloi lived an ordinary life. However, behind the bright photos on social media lay secrets that none of her loved ones could unravel. A secret love, intense conflicts, and a fateful night led to a tragedy that shocked not only her family, but the entire city. When her body was found in a 4-foot grave in Medina village, the truth began to emerge. Sonia Nangaloi was a girl whose life at first glance was no different from many other young people living in the crowded West Delhi area. Her family, residing in Nangaloi, was not particularly wealthy but cared for their children. Sonia dreamed of becoming more popular, achieving success, breaking out of her everyday reality. Her main platform for self-expression became social media, where she enthusiastically shared bright photos, short videos, and moments from her life. At the time of the tragedy, Sonia was only 19 years old, but she had already managed to gain an audience of more than 6,000 followers. To many, she seemed more confident than she actually was, because behind the beautiful posts was a girl with many internal conflicts. Among her photos and videos on social media, one person often appeared, a young man whom Sonia called Bhut, which translates from Hindi as ghost. None of her family and friends knew how close their relationship was. She preferred to keep everything that happened between them a secret. This relationship was not simple. For Bhut, it would later turn out that his real name was Salim. The relationship with Sonia was more of an amusement than a serious attachment. However, for Sonia, they became the basis of her dreams and plans for the future. By the fall of 2024, her dreams had taken on a completely different color. Sonia learned that she was expecting a child, and this news did not frighten her, but on the contrary, strengthened her belief in the need to start a family with Salim. She not only did not hide her joy, but also insisted that Salim marry her and acknowledge the child. But for him, the news of the pregnancy came as a shock. Salim not only did not want a child, but also did not plan to seriously tie his life to Sonia. Constant arguments began to flare up between them. Sonia increasingly insisted on marriage, while Salim insisted on abortion. This tension, gradually building in their relationship, would become a key factor leading to tragedy. A key trait of Sonia's was her persistence. She continued to believe that she could convince Salim to marry her. Against the backdrop of conflict with her lover, she preferred not to involve her family in her problems, understanding that this would raise even more questions and condemnation. She walked a path that seemed right to her, not suspecting how close she was to a tragic end. The secrecy of her life with Bhut and her internal struggles became the foundation for subsequent events. Her decision to meet with Salim on that fateful day would be the last step on a path full of hopes that collapsed in an instant. Sonia continued to insist on her position. She imagined a future where she and Salim, despite all disagreements, would be together, raising a child and living a happy life. However, reality turned out to be much darker. Salim perceived the situation completely differently. For him, Sonia's pregnancy was a problem, and her persistence was a threat to his peace of mind. With each passing day, the conflicts between them became more serious. Salim tried to convince Sonia to get rid of the child, but she firmly refused. This was her personal boundary that she did not allow to be violated, despite the pressure. She believed that love and the desire to preserve the family could change Salim. However, he had already made a decision. Instead of viewing a future with Sonia as something inevitable, Salim began to perceive her as an obstacle. This became the beginning of the end. In the fall of 2024, Salim began to develop a plan that he thought would rid him of problems forever. He shared his thoughts with two friends, Ritik and Pankaj. Together, they thought through everything to the smallest detail. On the day of Karva Chauth, a traditional holiday when married women fast for the health of their husbands, they decided to carry out their plan. Salim chose Karva Chauth for a reason. He knew that Sonia's family would be busy celebrating, and her leaving the house might not arouse suspicion. Moreover, the evening streets would be full of celebrating people, which would give them more freedom of movement. He rented a car that was to become an important part of their plan. Riddick and Pankaj agreed to help, probably not realizing the full weight of the crime they were committing. They prepared a place to bury the body in Medina village, not far from Rohtak, where dense forests and empty fields could hide traces of their crime. On October 23, 2024, Sonia left home. She took with her several personal items that she thought she would need if she and Salim decided to start living together. For her, this was a step towards a new chapter in life. She hoped that she could convince him of the seriousness of her intentions and the need to keep the child. Salim met her in Nangaloi. He was calm and confidently smiling, as if nothing had happened. Sonia, not suspecting what awaited her, got into the car where his friends were already waiting. Together, they headed towards Rohtak. For Sonia, this was a trip with the man she loved. For Salim, it was the final stage of implementing his plan. A tense silence reigned in the car. Sonia tried to start a conversation, but her attempts were shattered by Salim's cold silence. She felt that something was wrong, but could not imagine that her beloved was preparing to commit the irreparable. The car moved further away from the urban bustle. When they entered a dense forest near Medina village, Sonia asked where they were heading, but Salim responded evasively. Perhaps she hoped that he had chosen a secluded place to calmly discuss their future, but fear had already settled in her heart. Salim stopped the car on the outskirts of the forest. He and his friends led Sonia outside, explaining that they wanted to take a short walk. The Karva Chauv night was dark, only the moon illuminating their path. They went deeper into the forest, further from the road, until they reached a pre-dug 4-foot pit. When they arrived at the spot, Salim moved to action. He attacked Sonia, using force to suppress her resistance. She tried to fight back, screamed, but the forest muffled her cries for help. Salim, with the support of his accomplices, strangled her. The life of the 19-year-old girl ended at this place, far from her home, family, and the dreams she had so vividly seen. After the murder, Salim and his friends wrapped the body in clothes she had brought with her and lowered it into the pit. They covered it with earth, carefully smoothing the surface so that nothing would reveal the location of the burial. After this, the three men hastily left the crime scene. They returned to the car as if nothing had happened and headed back to Delhi. Meanwhile, Sonia's family began to worry. Her absence at the Karva Chauv celebration was uncharacteristic. Even more suspicion was raised by the fact that she wasn't answering calls. Her relatives assumed that she might have gone to meet Salim, but they could not imagine that this meeting would prove fatal for her. When Sonia didn't return home by morning, her family contacted the police. On October 23, an official missing person report was filed. The search began, and soon police attention focused on Salim, who, according to the family, was the last person she had been in contact with. Salim came under police scrutiny almost immediately. His actions and behavior raised suspicions. During questioning, he got confused in his testimony, and under pressure from investigators, he eventually confessed. Salim revealed that he had planned the murder in advance and told them where he and his friends had buried the body. This information shocked the police and Sonia's family. For her loved ones, it was the most terrible confirmation of their fears. After Salim's confession, the police immediately went to the location he had indicated in Medina village, near Rohtak. They arrived there early in the morning, armed with excavation tools. The operation to exhume the body was conducted following all procedures to ensure the preservation of evidence. When Sonia's body was discovered, it caused not only horror but also fury among law enforcement. Her burial in a 4-foot pit, so carefully disguised by the criminals, testified to the cold-bloodedness and premeditation of the murder. Forensic experts carefully examined the site. They collected soil samples, the victim's clothing, and other possible evidence that could help in further investigation. All details were recorded: the depth of the burial, the position of the body, and traces of possible involvement of several people. The presence of multiple suspects became obvious when the police found out that not only Salim but also two of his friends Ritik and Pankaj were involved in the crime. Salim informed the investigation that they played key roles in implementing the plan. After Salim's confession, he was immediately detained. One of his accomplices, Ritik, was also found and arrested within a few days. However, the third suspect, Pankaj, managed to escape, which complicated the task for the investigation. The police began an operation to search for him, distributing descriptions and checking possible locations of his whereabouts. Salim, while in custody, fully realized the seriousness of his situation. During interrogations, he detailed how the murder plan was developed. According to him, Ritik and Pankaj helped rent the car, dig the pit, and deliver Sonia to the forest. News of Sonia's tragic death quickly spread throughout the area, causing shock and deep sorrow among her loved ones. For her family, this became an unbearable loss. They couldn't believe that the person Sonia trusted could commit such a cruel crime. The public reacted with indignation. Numerous posts appeared on social media demanding justice for Sonia. Many discussed the role of interpersonal conflicts, secret relationships, and the pressure women face in such situations. Despite the arrests, the case was not yet closed. The police continued to gather evidence to ensure the harshest punishment for Salim and his accomplices. Investigators carefully studied the correspondence between Salim and Sonia, analyzed calls, and checked the alibis of other participants. At the same time, the search for Pankaj continued, who, according to the investigation, could be hiding with relatives or friends. Law enforcement increased pressure, spreading information about his search in several states. For Sonia's family, this time became a difficult ordeal. They hoped that the guilty would receive punishment that would match the severity of their crime. The revelation of the crime and the arrest of Salim with his accomplice Ritik were only the beginning of a long path to justice. The police began actively collecting evidence to present irrefutable charges against the murderers. At the center of the investigation were Salim's own testimony, correspondence between him and Sonia, as well as physical evidence found at the crime scene. At one stage of the interrogation, Salim described the murder plan in detail. He confessed that the decision to eliminate Sonia arose from her refusal to have an abortion. Her persistent attempts to convince him to marry not only irritated him but also caused fear. He was afraid that Sonia would tell his family or the public about their relationship. According to Salim, he saw murder as the only way out. His testimony, given during the investigation, was documented and became the main evidence of the premeditation of the crime. After the completion of the preliminary investigation, the case was transferred to court. The prosecution brought charges under the following articles: murder section 302 of the Indian Penal Code, conspiracy to commit a crime section 120B of the Indian Penal Code, concealment of evidence section 201 of the Indian Penal Code. Salim and Ritik appeared before the court as defendants, while Pankaj, still at large, was declared a fugitive. The trial began with hearing the charges, witness testimonies, and analysis of physical evidence. The main evidence in the case included Salim's confession, a detailed account of the crime, including circumstances, location, and method of murder. Crime scene: the discovery of Sonia's body in the location indicated by Salim. This confirmed his direct involvement in the murder. The electronic evidence, correspondence and call records between Salim and Sonia, which confirmed their conflicts over the pregnancy. Witness testimony: Sonia's family recounted her last days, including information about her plans to meet with Salim. Salim's lawyers tried to present his actions as impulsive, caused by emotional pressure. They argued that the murder was not premeditated but occurred as a result of a spontaneous quarrel. However, the investigation and prosecution insisted on premeditation, citing the pre-dug pit and car rental. Sonia's case caused significant resonance in society. Journalists followed every stage of the investigation, covering the details of the crime. Many demanded fair and severe punishment for Salim and his accomplices. Protests took place on the streets of Nandoloi and Rohtak. People came out with placards that read "Justice for Sonia" and "Punish the guilty." Hashtags dedicated to her memory were actively spread on social media. In the first stage of the trial, Salim was found guilty of premeditated murder. Riddick also received a guilty verdict for participation in the conspiracy and aiding in concealing evidence. Their sentences were harsh, considering the gravity of the crime and public pressure. Salim was sentenced to life imprisonment. Riddick received 20 years in prison. Pankaj remained at large, and the police continued to search for him, issuing a national arrest warrant. Despite the successful arrest and conviction of Salim and Riddick, the third accomplice, Pankaj, managed to escape. His disappearance became a challenge for law enforcement. The announcement of his search was distributed throughout the state and neighboring regions, but initially, no traces could be found. According to the investigation, Pankaj could be hiding with acquaintances or distant relatives. The police conducted a series of raids on suspected hideouts, including several villages in Haryana where he might have sought refuge. Every lead was checked: citizen reports, anonymous calls, as well as data on the movement of his mobile phone. Law enforcement understood that Pankaj's detention was not only a matter of justice but also an important step for the full completion of the case. His capture could shed light on details that remained unclear, including the degree of his involvement in planning and carrying out the murder. In December 2024, 2 months after the start of the search, the police received information about Pankaj's possible whereabouts. One of his former neighbors noticed him in a small settlement near the border with Punjab. This witness claimed that Pankaj had changed his appearance, growing a beard and altering his manner of speaking to avoid identification. The police organized a special operation, during which a raid was conducted on the suspect's hideout. Pankaj was detained without resistance. During the arrest, they found fake documents on him, which he probably planned to use to flee the country. After the arrest, Pankaj was charged with complicity in murder, conspiracy, and concealment of evidence. During interrogations, he confirmed Salim's words that the murder was carefully planned. According to him, he helped prepare the burial site and was present at the crime scene at the time of the murder. His confession strengthened the prosecution's position. Now all key figures in the case were in the hands of the investigation, and the process gained completeness. Pankaj's detention became an important event for Sonia's family and her supporters. People perceived this as a sign that justice would prevail completely. Gratitude actions for the police work took place on the streets of Nangaloi. At the same time, Sonia's case once again drew public attention to issues of women's safety, especially those who become victims of violence in personal relationships. Active discussions began in society about the need to strengthen protection measures, early prevention of such situations, and tightening punishments for such crimes. Pankaj's arrest became a key moment in Sonia's case. Now that all 3 participants in the crime were in custody, the trial entered a new level. Prosecutors got the opportunity to fully reveal the picture of the crime, providing additional evidence and testimony to achieve fair punishment for all involved. Court hearings began with the presentation of official charges to Pankaj. He was accused of participation in conspiracy to murder, assistance in concealing the body, consciously obstructing justice. In his first testimony, Pankaj tried to mitigate his guilt, claiming that his role was insignificant and he was only following Salim's instructions. However, the investigation and prosecution proved that he actively participated in the preparation and implementation of the murder plan. During the hearings, the following evidence was presented. First, Pankaj's confessions. He confirmed that he was present at the crime scene and helped dig the pit for Sonia's body. Second, testimony of Riddick and Salim. Their evidence confirmed that Pankaj was an active participant in the crime. Third, evidence from the crime scene examination of soil, clothing, and other materials indicated his direct presence. After several weeks of court sessions, the judge delivered the verdict. Pankaj, like Salim, was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. The court took into account that he deliberately evaded justice, which only increased the severity of his punishment. The sentences in the case were as follows. Salim received life imprisonment without the right to early release. Riddick was sentenced to 20 years in prison for complicity in the crime. Pankaj received 25 years of imprisonment, considering his active participation in attempts to avoid punishment. The sentences brought satisfaction to most of Sonia's family supporters. Many believe that the punishment for Salim and his accomplices was fair. However, some women's rights activists pointed out the need to make changes to the laws so that such crimes could be prevented at the stage of threats. Sonia's family, although expressing gratitude to the police and the court for their efforts, continued to mourn their daughter. Her mother told journalists, "We have received justice, but no sentence will bring Sonia back to us. She was our joy, and now she's gone." After the conclusion of the trial, the case of Sonia Kumari remained at the center of public attention. It became not just a tragic story, but also a symbol of the need for a more serious approach to issues of women's safety, interpersonal conflicts, and justice in society. Sonia's family, having experienced a huge loss, tried to rebuild their lives after all the upheavals. Her mother and father repeatedly shared memories of their daughter with journalists. Her mother said, "Sonia was energetic and full of life. She dreamed of the future, of family, of a child. We will never understand how someone could treat her so cruelly." The girl's relatives also advocated for tougher punishments for those who commit such crimes. The family became an active participant in events and campaigns aimed at raising awareness about the problems of violence in relationships. Sonia's case sparked a wave of discussions on social media and television. People demanded not only fair punishment for the guilty but also changes in legislation. The main issues raised were protection of women from violence in relationships. It was proposed to develop additional support measures for women who face threats or pressure from partners. Tougher punishments for murders based on personal conflicts. The public insisted that such crimes should be punished as severely as possible. Education and support for youth. Proposals were put forward to introduce educational programs for teenagers and young people to prevent violence and teach them peaceful conflict resolution. Sonia's case attracted the attention of human rights organizations and government structures. In some states, reforms were initiated aimed at tightening measures against violence in relationships. In addition, control over online threats and harassment was strengthened, considering the role of social media in young people's personal lives. To preserve Sonia's memory, her friends and followers on social media created a page dedicated to her life and the fight for justice. This initiative not only became a place to express condolences but also a platform for discussing violence in relationships and its consequences. The page featured posts with photos and videos of Sonia, memories from her friends, and calls to fight for women's rights. People wrote, "Sonia will remain in our hearts as a symbol of the struggle for justice." The case of Sonia Kumari became a lesson for society. It reminded of the importance of early intervention in situations where women are subjected to violence or manipulation. Public discussions led to some changes. Lectures on healthy relationships began to be held in schools and colleges. Hotlines were launched to help women in difficult situations. The work of organizations providing shelter and legal support to victims of violence was strengthened. Sonia's story was mentioned in a number of initiatives related to changing legislation. Human rights defenders proposed naming future laws in her honor so that her tragedy would become a reminder of the need to protect the vulnerable. Despite the completion of the trial, the case of Sonia Kumari left behind many questions. The main one: how to prevent such tragedies in the future. The answer to this question was sought not only by lawyers and activists but also by ordinary citizens. The story of Sonia Kumari remained a symbol of the devastating consequences of violence and betrayal. Her case drew public attention, reminding of the importance of protecting women and responsibility for one's actions. Sonia's family continues to remember her as an energetic and brave girl whose dreams were cut short too early. Peace has not returned to their home, but justice has been restored.